This past weekend, we saw a bunch of great quarterback play, and those teams have no doubt that those guys, Josh Allen, Mahomes, and even Joe Burrow, guys like that, Matthew Stafford, I'd say too.
Thanks, bro.
They're the franchise quarterback of their teams. But one team that lost might not have that same reassurance with theirs. The Tennessee Titans, first seed in the NFL, had a bye week, faced the Bengals, who were underdogs. They lost the game. Ryan Tannehill threw 3 picks. And do you think that he is the problem for the Tennessee Titans? Either one of you can go first.
I can go first.
Okay, go ahead.
Tannehill played like trash this weekend and is 100% the reason that they lost. The defense was spectacular. Holding one of the best offenses in the league to 19 points is something that deserves credit in and of itself. To get 9 sacks on the quarterback, Joe Burrow, and come out with the loss, tied for the most sacks in playoff history, is sad. And if I'm the defense, I am very, very disappointed that my quarterback could not overcome himself. It seemed as if he got too flustered in the moment. There were a lot of plays where we've seen Tannehill throughout the season, throughout his career right now in Tennessee, him make big-time throws. A.J. Brown had a great game for his standards. Julio Jones had probably his best game this season. At least when it mattered most, you could at least count on Julio this past weekend. Derrick Henry had some moments where he looked like Derrick Henry, but it looked like he had a tough time reading the holes a little bit. There were some plays, one specifically where he's cutting to the right, then realizes that he has a hole to his left, completely cuts, breaks out to the left. He had some impressive runs. That one touchdown that he had where they were running the Wildcat was impressive. But ultimately, I look at Tannehill, and I look at the turnovers that he had. The one to end the game was crazy. I remember you and I were going back and we had a little bit of a dialogue between it, like, there's how many seconds left. They're trying to put themselves in field goal range. There's 3 bodies, Bengal bodies, in the vicinity of that ball. Why are you trying to force it in that situation? At that point, play for overtime. I can understand you trying to put your team in a position to score, but why force something, especially when you understand you haven't had the best game? For me personally, I look at it like this. If Tannehill has 2 interceptions, I think they win this game. They got to Joe Burrow 9 times, and the offense was unable to capitalize. I think that they, like you had mentioned a little bit before, that when we were talking before, that they needed to give Donta Foreman the ball a little bit more. He clearly had the hot hand going into the game, and we saw when he got the ball in this game, he looked explosive. He had probably the biggest play of the game for the Titans on that one breakaway run that I think was almost, 50 yards, something like that. I think that Tannehill cleans up this game. They win this without a doubt. And there was a point in the game where momentum was completely on the Titans' side. And then 2 turnovers later, the Bengals are right in it. I think Tannehill was the main reason why they lost. However, do I think they need to move off of him? Personally, no. I think that where we saw Joe Burrow get pressured a bunch in this game, I think Tannehill was not the same pressure, but he was definitely feeling the pressure. Tennessee's pass blocking is not good by any means. It hasn't been good all year, but Tannehill has been able to manage it. The defense and him have been able to cohesively work together to win games. Unfortunately, when you're playing a team as hot as the Bengals right now, that's not going to be the case.
Joel, I know that you're going to say Tannehill's the problem. So before you go, let me just go because I don't think he was the problem.
This weekend?
No. He was not.
I'm shocked.
I don't.
I'm shocked.
I don't.
We watched the same film. How could you think that?
Because we watched the same film. I just don't know if you saw it the same way I saw it. But we'll talk about it. I don't think Ryan Tannehill was a problem for the Titans. And I think this happens way too much in football, that because a team loses and a player plays bad, oh, look at him. He's the problem. It's his fault. Look at the interceptions. Yeah. 3 interceptions. That's alarming. It sounds an alarm. If you just look at the box score, you say, yeah, he played an awful game. You mentioned it. He was pressured damn near the whole game, kind of like Burrow.
No doubt.
The right side of Tennessee's offensive line with Nate Davis and Quessenberry, I mean, that is just a flat-out embarrassment.
Not good.
DJ Reader was having his way with Nate Davis all day long. Then you look at the left side. Taylor Lewan is supposed to be a Pro Bowl left tackle. Trey Hendrickson absolutely dominated that matchup. I mean, it wasn't even close. He straight up dominated. I thought the problem was that Titans were 1 for 8 on third down. They weren't very good on third down. And let's just take a look at the 3 interceptions that Tannehill threw. The first one is the one that I give him the most blame for. But even that wasn't a bad read. While I was watching the All-22, that's actually the only game I watched the All-22 one. I didn't get a chance because I didn't have time to watch the other ones. Was you had A.J. Brown wide open on a curl.
Yep.
I mean, he was wide open on a curl. Tannehill let it rip. And Jesse Bates just broke on the ball.
It was a great play.
He just broke on the ball in a way that, I mean, it was just a fantastic play from him.
Because I'm sorry, bro, but if I'm the Bengals and Derrick Henry's coming back, first game back, I'm thinking they're going to run the ball. So I thought it was great play design by Tennessee to run play action. But like you mentioned, the break that Jesse had on that ball was brilliant.
I think 99% of quarterbacks attempt that throw. It wasn't a bad read, in my opinion.
I agree.
Jesse Bates just made a hell of a play. We look at the second interception. I mean, Mike Hilton swatting the ball down and tipping it up and then intercepting it. I mean, that's just something. It was just a great play by Hilton. It wasn't a bad read by Tannehill. We always try to nitpick these things like, oh, he could have pump faked, then threw it. But come on, let's be realistic. Usually that doesn't happen. Then we look at the third interception. I don't think Westbrook-Akina was covered. I mean, I don't think Westbrook-Akina was smothered to the point that you talked about where there were 3 guys around him. It was man-to-man coverage.
It was a tight window for no reason.
For sure. It was a tight window. But as a quarterback, you can't predict that you're going to throw the ball into a tight window. I mean, he threw it on target to where Akina, if he was a better receiver, makes that play.
But was it a necessary throw?
At that point, you're trying to win the game. I thought it was worth the risk. And to me, it wasn't risky because it wasn't like he was double covered. It was a tight window, that's for sure. But he put the ball on target. If Westbrook-Akina was a better receiver, he makes that catch.
That defender was right there with him.
He was to his side.
He was on his body.
You're right. He was on his side, but the ball was here. Westbrook-Akina went like this, and then Eli Apple, who made that play, that was an excellent play. He batted it up. It was a great pass deflection. Usually in those plays, the ball goes down. But in this one, it went up, and then it gave Logan Wilson a chance to intercept the ball. To me, the first interception, Jesse Bates, great play. If you want to blame Tannehill for that, okay, whatever. That's a 50-50 one for me. The next 2 are tipped up balls, just bad luck. How many times do we see that happen and quarterbacks don't get intercepted? It was just bad luck, and yeah, it cost them the game because then the Bengals had great field position. Just for one play away, we saw Joe Burrow hit Jamar Chase, and they're already in field goal position, and they won the game. So, yeah, I understand. It did cost them the game. But do I look at that and I say, okay, bless you? Do I look at that and I say, wow, Tannehill, awful. He was like Jimmy G out there. I don't. I think Ryan Tannehill, he's a solid quarterback, and people still have this perception of Tannehill that he is who he was in Miami. He's not. Tannehill is a good quarterback in the NFL.
Agreed.
Is he a great one? No. Is he at his best top 15, meaning like 11th to 15th best quarterback? Yes, absolutely. I'd put him around the middle in the league. He is to Tennessee what Alex Smith was to Kansas City. Tennessee won't win big, won't win a Super Bowl until they find a true superstar quarterback, especially playing in the AFC. You just need one. The AFC is so stacked with quarterbacks. When you look at Tannehill's numbers, 76 touchdowns to 27 picks, 67% completion percentage, 102 passer rating when he's playing for the Titans. And I'm not a big fan of win-loss record, but you look at the win-loss record, he's 30-13. And all year long, with all their injuries, he kept them afloat.
No doubt.
He didn't cost them games. Maybe some, but he really didn't cost them games. Tannehill was a solid option. If I'm Tennessee, this is what they have to do. Tannehill is good where he's at. I'm not looking to replace Tannehill unless I can find a superstar quarterback, which with their cap situation is going to be really hard to do. I'm upgrading that offensive line, the right side specifically. I'm getting a tight end option because they don't have a good tight end. And I'm drafting a quarterback who I think has a high ceiling, in my opinion, Malik Willis, and he's sitting under Tannehill for 2 to 3 seasons, and when he's ready, now I move off from Tannehill. But at this point, No, Tannehill is fine where he's at.
I think you could also throw a wide receiver in there because who knows what happens with Julio. And, throughout the season, he's been injured and just really hasn't looked like himself.
No doubt.
We said last week, right? We talked about Jalen Hurts. We don't overreact to one game, right? I feel the same way about this for Tannehill. We know what Tannehill is. He's a good and could have great moment quarterback. It seems like it's been a while, especially in the playoffs, that like we saw him kind of implode like this. I know you're saying he had the 3 interceptions. They weren't all his fault. But when you're into the playoffs in these high leverage situations, you have to be a little bit better on each throw because you're going up against a pretty good team in the Bengals who have been hot, one of the hotter teams in the NFL coming in, 4 or 5 wins in a row. So, while maybe they weren't all his fault, you also have to up your game in the playoffs because you're playing better competition. The offensive line didn't play great. They allowed 9 pressures. He got sacked 1 time. They didn't play terrible to the point where I think Tannehill should have thrown 3 interceptions. That first one, you're right. Jesse Bates did make a great break on the ball, but Jesse Bates is a great player. So, what are you going to do at that point?
He's been up and down this year.
But he's been
overall,
playing excellent football
He has
the
been,
second half
and in
of the
years
season.
past, he's been really good.
I would just say for the past 2 games.
No, he's been playing good since like week 11, week 12.
He wasn't good versus San Fran.
I guess, but that's pretty fair.
He's been up and down this year, but there's no doubt that in the playoffs, he's been what he was last year.
And I was going to say, he said years past, we know Jesse Bates could have, elite safety play when he's really on his game.
Definitely.
So when I look, I'm like, what can the Titans possibly have done here, right? I mean, Derrick Henry's back. He had 20 carries for 60 yards. He didn't look like his old self. Deontay Foreman, in his limited touches, looked really good. I tweeted around the third quarter that I thought he should get more burn because he looked like the guy who had more juice, more explosiveness, in that game, and then working Derrick Henry where you see fit. Like I said, the offensive line was okay. It wasn't great. A.J. Brown had a great game. He had 142 yards, breaking the Titans record, so he's not a problem. You have an elite weapon, but you do need another one outside. I tweeted, I think it was on Saturday, I was looking at the playoff teams. A lot of them have multiple elite options, and I was kind of counting Derrick Henry in that tier of you have A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry, right? You have 2 elite options on offense, but when Derrick Henry isn't playing to the caliber we're expecting him to, and now your number 2 is Julio Jones, who he's had his moments here and there, but overall this season's been disappointing. He's probably more as a wide receiver 3 at this point in his career when you look at guys who have, like a T. Higgins as your wide receiver 2 or an Odell, his resurgence in LA. I don't think Julio Jones really stacks up with those guys at this point. You can't blame the defense either. We'll just get that out of the way. They had 9 sacks. Can't blame the defense. But when I look forward for the Titans, I agree. You can't move off Ryan Tannehill. He's been too good over these last few seasons, and he's good enough in the perfect situation to be able to take you to a Super Bowl. But when you look at the rest of this AFC, you mentioned it, you're going to have to go through Burrow every year, Herbert, 2 quarterbacks we just saw, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. And then you got the young guys, like we think Zach has a really high ceiling. Trevor Lawrence, we all believe, has a really high ceiling. So when you're looking at Ryan Tannehill and you're stacking him up against all of these quarterbacks in the AFC, especially if you take potential into it as well, you're looking at him as like, what's he, maybe the 7th quarterback you take in the AFC right now? So you really need to have a great team around him. And we've seen in years past the Titans have great teams. But when your quarterback when his potential and his upside is capped, so is the rest of their team. That's why they haven't been able to get to the Super Bowl. They haven't been able to get to the hump. What's even worse is his cap hit goes from $11 million this year to nearly $40 million in 2022 and $36 million in 2023. You could possibly get out of his contract if he does play bad next year with about $18 million in dead cap. That's not the end of the world in today's NFL. But you might be able to get lucky one of these years and you beat a Mahomes or a Josh Allen. You're able to get to that Super Bowl. But I do like your idea. Possibly get a high upside quarterback like a Malik Willis, someone who has the ability to turn into a superstar level quarterback. Because we know what Tannehill is. He's really good, but I just don't think he's going to be good enough to bring you to the promised land.
I mean, I agree with you. I don't think Tannehill's good enough quarterback to get you over the top. I just don't think he is the biggest need for the Tennessee Titans right now.